Hello and welcome to Comic Culture. I'm Terrence Dollard, a professor in the Department of Mass Communication at the University of North Carolina at Pembroke. Now, clearly we are not in the TV studio today. We're in Baltimore for the Baltimore Comic Con. On this half hour, we're going to take you down to the convention floor to talk to some writers and artists and fans. Stay tuned. For 3 days, Baltimore Comic Con drew tens of thousands of fans to the Baltimore Convention Center. It's a true comic book show, and organizers brought in top writers and artists, like the legendary Arthur Adams. Arthur, you're at Baltimore Comic Con.
I am.
You are known for some of the best covers in comics, so I'm just wondering, when you are sitting down at a drawing board, what goes into your head when you've got to put together a good cover?
The first thing that comes into my head is that the mortgage is due, so I need to get something done quickly. Well, so whenever I'm working on a cover, I'm trying to sell the book. That is the goal of whoever's doing the covers, to try to interest someone in buying it. So I try to make something exciting, something that has a little bit of a story in it to tease the reader, and hopefully produce a nice piece of art.
And your work is also very detailed, so I'm imagining that it takes you a good deal of time to complete something like a Godzilla cover or maybe an X-Men or Black Lagoon cover.
On average, for me, covers take about a week from beginning to end. So I'll do a sketch for an editor. I'll do several sketches for the editor, and they will pick the one they think will work for the book they're doing best, and then I will sit down and get out my pencil and sketch it out, and then get out my inking tools and ink away. And by the end, hopefully, the editorial is happy with what they've got.
So are you still using the traditional tools, the pen, the ink, the brush?
I use pencil and pens. Yeah, I use just simple things like these. We shouldn't probably put the label on there but basically things you can buy at a local art store, generally easy to find stuff.
Baltimore's Artist Alley blended big stars with independent creators like Kelly Yates. Can you tell us about Amber?
Yeah, absolutely. So Amber Adams is my creator-owned book. It came out through Image Comics in 2009. I got 4 issues of it out, and basically the idea behind it is the female Flash Gordon. So a little bit of Flash Gordon, a little bit of Luke Skywalker, a little bit of Star Wars. So it's kind of my female version of that. And I was able to get 4 issues of it out, and that's kind of where I am with it.
So you published it as a trade paperback. You went through Kickstarter.
Mm-hmm.
Is it tough to sort of go from being the creative mind to being the business mind?
Kind of being able to flip back and forth is kind of soothing sometimes, because sometimes you spend so much time being creative and illustrating and doing that, and so it's kind of nice to kind of figure out the other piece of the process. And I found it really kind of interesting to figure out how to get my property out there, because when I created through Image, they just handled everything. It just kind of disappeared from my hands. It wasn't until it came up in the stores that I saw it again. Versus Kickstarter, I did it myself. I printed it through a company in Korea, and I was able to kind of figure out, okay, this is the process, and so it made me much more engaged to figure out how to get it to the consumer, to the reader. So that was a pretty interesting process. So I liked it. I liked being able to do both sides, both the creative and the salesperson bit of it.
And I'm imagining this is a book that you worked on in 2009. It's 2023 now.
Yeah.
Is there a temptation to go back and look at those pages and say, you know what, I'm a better artist now. I can fix this, and I can tweak that, and I can make it a little bit sharper?
Oh, I think any creative person can go back and look in their stuff. I can do that better. I can do that 100 times better. And I think that is where I came with this. That's why I created a new 7-page story for this, because I want to show I'm a better writer, I'm a better illustrator, I'm a better colorist now. So that was kind of the point of that. Yeah.
And if the folks at home wanted to find out more about you, is there a place on the web they can look it up?
Sure. KellyYatesArt.com. That's the space. Go check it out.
Artists tend to get the most attention at conventions, but Baltimore Comic Con also invited many writers, like Ron Mars. Ron, you recently returned to Marvel for a Silver Surfer story. So when you go back to a character that you've had great success with, how does that happen? Does Marvel call you up and say, hey, we want to put the band back together because we want the bump?
Yeah, essentially. Marvel called and said, do you want to do Surfer again? And I said, well, is Ron Lim going to do it? And they said, well, he said he'll do it if you do it. And I'm like, all right, I'll do it if he'll do it. So it was an easy decision because I love working with him, and it's very much a full circle kind of exercise. Literally, the first stuff I ever wrote was Silver Surfer, and the first story I ever wrote was drawn by Ron Lim. So I'm back where I started.
And it's interesting because you have a relationship with Ron and also with Darryl Banks. So when a project comes up and you can work with somebody that you've got a great relationship with, is there? I guess there's the extra enthusiasm, but do you sort of collaborate to come up with the story to make it a little bit tighter?
It depends on the project, depends on the collaborator. But I like to be collaborative with the artists that I work with, and a lot of it is like, what do you want to draw? What do you not want to draw? When Ron was working on the first miniseries, the editor requested we put Jack of Hearts into the story, and I'm like, okay, that's a weird one, but I called Ron and said, they want Jack of Hearts, like, do you want to draw that? Because his costume is such a pain in the ass to draw. I felt like I needed to check with him first, and he said, yeah, okay, let's do it, because Ron's the most enthusiastic guy I've ever known. So he's, yeah, okay, let's do that. And then of course when we got to the end of it, he was like, oh yeah, Jack of Hearts sucked. It was just, it takes a lot of time to noodle up that detail. But part of the job, a large part of the job for me really is to make sure that the artist is happy and engaged and excited about what they're going to sit down and do that day. A bunch of talking heads isn't really the most exciting thing that you can do for 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day. So my charge is to make sure that I'm giving them something that they're excited about drawing.
And my last question will be, we're at Baltimore convention. Is it difficult, to sort of get up, hop on those planes, go to the hotels, go to the convention for 3 days? I know it's part of the business, but is it a tough part of the business?
Yeah, I mean, you go home at the end of these things and you're tired. This is, you do these things, you talk with people that come to the table, and you want to make sure that everybody goes away with a good experience, so you have to be on all day. And then, especially a show like this, which is kind of a family reunion, you see so many people that you've worked with and you're friends with, and you're going out to dinner and having a few drinks in the bar and not getting enough sleep, sleeping in a lumpy bed. It's exhausting. But it's it's in some ways it's the reward. You get to go, to some cool places, see friends, experience a different town, or a different country in a lot of cases, and then you go back into your hobbit hole. Like there's no real happy medium. Like you're sitting in a room by yourself doing the job, and then you're in a convention center with 20,000 people. It's sort of whiplash, but like you said, it's part of the job, and it does recharge you a bit. It does, seeing your friends, talking with people that come up to the table and are enthusiastic about what you did, or what the work has meant to them. That puts some wind in your sails.
Like Ron said, conventions are fun but exhausting. By day 3, batteries are pretty drained. I spoke with Howard Chaykin about attending cons. Howard, comic conventions are, I guess, interesting for us fans, but for a professional who's been in the industry for a few years, what's it like going to something like this and meeting those of us who are fans and want to, hear stories or get autographs?
Well, in a serious answer to your question, which you're probably expecting something more facetious, I regard the convention as my client, and the conventioneers are my client's customers. Therefore, I'm here to be of service to those customers. I believe in engagement. I think the attendees are entitled to some attention, some call and response, and as has been indicated to me over the past couple of days, I can't shut up. So I'm always good for a chat. I always encourage people not to line up at my table, but to wrap around it. So it's more of it's not a VD clinic, it's a bar, and I'm willing to exchange spiritedly, but I'm rarely wrong, so it creates a problem for people who think they're in my league.
And one of the things I have noticed, because I've come by, this is the 3rd day of the convention, I just remember coming by yesterday and Friday, and you've got a lineup of people here, and you are gregarious, telling stories, a lot of laughter going on. So at the end of the day, are you just completely wiped from all that interaction, or are you ready to go because, you've got a big personality?
I'm one step away from a coma, and I don't have that big a line. I have have an occasional line. I mean, Walter has a big line because they're all whores. They can get something for nothing or for close to free. I don't do that. I'm here to. I work for the Hero Initiative. I provide money for those guys, and I'm difficult. I'm not nice. I'm good. I'm situationally kind. I don't stand for idiots. As I said, I'm always embarrassed by people who think they're in my league of meeting me wit for wit. I'm not funny, but I'm clever, witty, and quick. And it has not served me well because people prefer the anodyne.
And I guess my last question is going to be...
Last question?
Last question.
Oh my God.
I don't want to keep you any longer than you need to be kept.
I'm about to close up and slip into that coma I was talking about, but please go on.
So, when you have to pack everything up and head out, is this the type of thing that you look forward to as the cons come, or is this something where it's just part of the business and as a result, being the professional that you are, you do it grudgingly?
No, I love going to shows. I like engagement. I'm also this show in particular, Baltimore. It's a particular collegial show. I've had dinner the past 3 nights with longtime friends, with people I've known for nearly 50 years, in some cases more than 50 years, because I'm really old. And for me, the convention. I know a lot of guys do the show, and after the show is over, they go back to their rooms and they draw. Not me. Once that bell rings at the end of the day, I am home free and out to have if not a good time, then a quiet and pleasant one. I'm in town. I'm leaving tomorrow morning, so tonight I will have dinner with colleagues, and they're all pissing and moaning that I made my reservation too late, and they can go to hell.
I enjoy going to conventions to pick the brains of artists whose work I admire, like Tom Mandrake. Tom, you have worked for independent publishers, you have worked for the major publishers, and you have also been an academic teaching the next generation of comic professionals. So in your, path between getting started to getting into the classroom, what have you sort of picked up that's enabled you to maybe do things a little bit better as you get a little bit older?
Well, working at the Kubert School has helped me keep a fresh perspective. I think one of the things that's true, maybe not with everybody, but with a lot of artists, is that we're, by nature, reclusive. We want to get in the studio, stay in the studio, and hide. And that's not necessarily a healthy thing. So getting out as an instructor 1 or 2 times a week, working with other people is a positive for me. And now that, it used to be that all the publishers were in New York City. Marvel was there, DC was there. And you'd walk your work in, you'd hang out with editors, other writers, artists. You push your work or find new projects by being in person. It's not true anymore. DC doesn't really even have offices anymore. So that's made it even worse for those of us who are, in essence, just willing to hide from the world. So being at the Kubert School has been a real benefit in that respect.
And you started working on, I know you worked on Batman at DC, then you worked on, I think it was Martian Manhunter, and then The Spectre. So is it something where an editor sees something in your work and says you should be working on these sort of spooky, scary, heavy shadow books, or is it something where you're just like, that's the sort of assignment that I love?
Well, DC offered me the Batman, and that was like 1985. The Spectre, which came after several other projects I did at DC, John and I actually put a proposal together for that. They didn't want to do the Spectre. So when we asked for the Spectre and we put that proposal together, like, nobody wants the Spectre. So it was our idea to do that. And they were like, oh, all right. And it turned out to be a success. We were right. And that was the same thing with Martian Manhunter. John and I picked both of those projects out, and even though DC was not particularly interested in either of those characters at the time, that's what we wanted to do. So they weren't asking us for that. We were chasing those characters. Very different than having them say, hey, why don't you do this project?
And I guess my last question is going to be, you started as a penciler inker, and I'm just wondering, when you are working, are you doing complete pencils and then doing the inks, or are you sort of leaving things loose and hoping things are going to snap together when you're putting the pen or the brush to the page?
I love that. The hoping that things are going to come together. That's actually really good. Because I ink most of my own stuff, almost always, I'm a pretty loose penciler. And that's because I know what I want to have happen. And yes, sometimes there are happy accidents, sometimes there are little disasters, but it's never so bad that you can't resolve it. But I do love to ink my own stuff. And I tell my students, layout, storytelling, that's the hard part. And the most important part, because this is, after all, about storytelling. It's not about pretty pictures necessarily. It's about reaching the reader through narrative storytelling. And then penciling is laying it out or getting the structure underneath it. But for me, the inking is the icing on the cake. It's the thing that I love the most. So that's the fun. After all that hard work, I want to be in there playing with the ink line. So that's why I like to do the whole thing, all the artwork myself.
Ron Garney is another artist I followed from book to book over the course of his career. You are an artist who's known for your work at Marvel and DC, but you are also one of the co-creators of Berserker, which is, from what I understand, it's got a celebrity pedigree.
Yeah. Well, actually, Keanu created it. He came up with the idea, then he kind of got in contact with Boom Studios, and they came up with a deal to make a comic book, and then I didn't come into the project till like a year after. It was sort of floundering. They weren't even sure it was going to happen. And then I was leaving my contract with Marvel, so I wanted to do something else, and this just sort of shot like a lightning bolt into my life. I got a phone call, and they asked if I could do a Zoom meeting with them, Boom Studios, and when I pressed the button, there's Keanu staring at me. So it was, hey, what's going on, very strange. But the rest is pretty much history. He told me all about the project, and it was 2.5 years in the making. We finally got it done. So we're going to do another one coming up soon. Next year, another 12 issues. So.
And is there ever a worry, you're leaving the security of Marvel to strike out onto something that has, Keanu Reeves is a big name, but he's not known for his comic work. So is there ever a concern that, maybe the mortgage might not get paid this month?
No, not really. At some point you have to roll the dice in life, I'm not a spring chicken anymore, and I was with Marvel for over 35 years, and DC, a couple of those. But, it was time for me. You have to trust your instincts, and I felt like it was, it was during COVID, and I was working on Juggernaut, and I just felt it, it was time to move on and try to do something, because I had a lot of ideas myself that I wanted to get made, and then this just happened to be leaving that, and then this fell into my lap. So that's what happens. Had I not done that, I wouldn't have done this, and this has been a big success. As far as Keanu's concerned, he's not known for comic books, but he's been in the storytelling industry, as long as I've been in comics, for 35 years. So he seamlessly kind of fit right in. He was, obviously, he likes to learn. He's a brilliant guy, but I noticed that his storytelling chops are all there, so it worked really well.
And when we're at a convention, we're at Baltimore Comic Con, when you're at a convention, you interact with fans, you do commissions. So how much of your day is spent drawing, and how much of it is spent, maybe wandering around saying hello to people?
I just wander around. Hey, what's going on, man? It's a very time-consuming career, believe me. It's very time-consuming being here and doing commissions and things like that, and trying to get them good, because you want it to be quality work for people, and it's like anything else, it takes time. But, there's some guys who are, it's a little more effortless for them. I'm not one of them. I have to really work at it to be good, but I was always someone who's willing to put the time in, so, that was another reason why I decided to kind of move on from my contract, because I was getting very burnt out from doing regular books, sitting in a room for endless hours, and not seeing the outside world, So I took the summer off, and I started doing some conventions just so I could get out and breathe a little bit and relieve the anxiety of deadline stress. But overall, it's a lot of work, and we do the best we can. But you have to love it a little bit. You know, at the end of the day, when you finish it and you come up with something that's, you know, a cool piece of art, it's very gratifying. So all that work means something to you, you know. So that's the important thing, is that we love it. We love what we do.
After a career at Marvel and DC, writer-artist Sean Chen is working with 24/7 Comics for his creator-owned series, Evermind. Sean, you are known for your work at Marvel, at DC, but you're with another publisher here at Baltimore Comic Con. So what is it about 24/7 that made you want to get involved?
Well, I think the life cycle of most comic book artists, you kind of start out, like the goal is to get into Marvel or DC. So once you're in there for a while, I think it's something that's good to do is kind of rotate out and get some new blood in there for Marvel and DC. It's like a kind of a young man's game. It's like where you really learn your chops and really grind. So once you're out of that, since they own all those characters, you take your experience and you actually kind of create your own stories and characters. So that's what this 24/7 Comics kind of affords me.
So you're known for your superheroics work, but is there another type of genre that you're looking to maybe scratch an itch? Superheroes is kind of like the thing that Marvel and DC do, and they do it very well. And that stuff works really well for comics visually, and it's a great kind of stories for comics. I'm more of like a science fiction guy, so my story is science fiction. And you can have since it's so saturated out there with superheroes, there's also even talk of like superhero fatigues because of all the movies. So science fiction seemed to be like the new frontier that is kind of like less, it's less tapped. That's kind of where the direction of my story is going. And what is your current project that you're most excited about?
So what I'm doing now for 24/7 Comics is a comic called Evermind. And it's a story that I came up with, and it's a science fiction story. It's kind of like a dystopian future, a lot of heavy themes, and it's a very a nuanced story that has a human component to it. So it's not just like robot and spaceship battles. It's really a story about a father and a daughter and their relationship. And I think it's a very exciting story, and it's different from their typical superhero fare.
What I really like about science fiction is that you can look at contemporary issues in a futuristic way, and the audience isn't necessarily aware that you might have a message in there about, the world. Is that something that you're kind of maybe sneaking in the vegetables in the chocolate pudding?
Absolutely. So yeah, I think it's a good way to kind of to make a statement about the world. In fact, all writing is like that. Every writer deep down inside is trying to make a case for how people should live their lives, and it's kind of told through a story form. So my story is a lot about being very careful about trying to achieve greatness at any cost. And so the protagonist is a highly flawed character, and then I kind of put him through his paces, and you can see what happens if you kind of make the wrong decisions in life.
I saw a lot of familiar faces at Baltimore Comic Con, including Heroes Con organizer Carla Southern. I'm speaking with Carla Southern, who you might recognize from any of our Heroes Con specials. You are one of the organizers of Heroes Con, but you're at the Baltimore Comic Con. So what's it like going to another show when you organize your own show?
Well, it's not as much work for me, which is the best part about going to another show. But we're also friends with Mark Nathan, who runs the Baltimore Comic Book Show. And we've been supporting him. We've been here for all 24 years of his show. And this is another comic book show. This is the closest thing to Heroes Con, I think, on the circuit even. So we like to support each other. Mark comes and sets up at Heroes Con in the summer, and then we come here in the early fall and set up here.
And you are set up here. You've got a lot of books on the rack there. You've got a lot of books in boxes. So, as a retailer, how much logistics are you putting in to make sure you've got the right books for a show like this?
Well, you definitely have to know what is your demographic? Who's coming? Is it people looking to buy gold and silver and older books, or is it newer books? And there are plenty of newer books in the room, so we always try to bring vintage, gold and silver age stuff. As far as the logistics, doing a show that's 7 hours away from home is a bit of a trek. You got to rent a van and you got to travel. So we've got a shop, so we have to have somebody to run the shop while the cats are away at a show. And there's hotel rooms, and you gotta take care of dinners for everybody who's on the road with you. So the logistics behind it are, people don't think about that. They think you're just here having fun, but it's also there's expenses that go into it. So.
Now, you do mention having fun, and I know for us working here this weekend, I've yet to look at a single comic book. So do you get a chance to sneak away and look for something that you enjoy?
I did get to actually walk around and talk to the creators that we bring into Heroes Con every year, but I'm so busy at our show, I don't actually get to see them at our show. So I got to go see Walt Simonson for 30 minutes and sit with Joe Staten and his wife Hillary for half an hour and talk to Bob McLeod and actually catch up, because they see me at Heroes Con when they check in, and they see me for 3 seconds on the floor if I'm running to put out this fire, running to put out that fire. And they're like, hi, bye, we'll see you in Baltimore. So it is nice to be able to come up here and actually shop and, talk to creators who may be here who haven't done Heroes Con, and try to convince new guests to come to the show, new vendors who I see they're set up here, and I'm like, oh, you would be a great fit for our show. Why don't you give Heroes Con a chance? It's a good way to recruit new people for our show for the next year, too.
It's the end of the third day of Baltimore Comic Con. I'm exhausted, and we've run out of time for this episode of Comic Culture. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you again soon.